The message came without warning. No fanfare, no ceremonial escort, just a pulse through every satellite, ship, and screen connected to the galactic net. One sentence, written in the trade language and repeated in every Earth dialect known. The Council requires your tribute. No amount of peace treaties, alliance talks, or Earth's silence for the last 30 years had prepared us for that. Tribute meant surrender. It meant offering up thousands of our children to the outer world labor camps. It meant handing over our technology, resources, and sovereignty to the Galactic Council, whose idea of diplomacy involved a gunship and a smile. Most of Earth's leaders debated it like cowards. Hours in long rooms, arguing over numbers and risk assessments, while our people marched in the streets. They burned flags, held their children close, some crying, some screaming for war. The rest of us? We waited for a voice that made sense. Mine came in the form of General Thorne. I met him once, years ago, before he vanished into classified black site projects buried beneath Antarctica. Back then, he was already a myth in uniform. A man carved from war, not bred for it. No frills, no fancy medals, just a scar down his cheek, and the kind of voice that silenced a room. But that night, when the tribute order lit up every broadcast tower on Earth, Thorne's face appeared on the emergency override channel. No one knew how he got access. Even the World Defense Network was caught off guard. But there he was, standing in what looked like a bunker with steel walls and silent soldiers behind him. He didn't flinch. He didn't clear his throat or ask permission. He just looked into the camera like he was staring the Council down face to face and said one word. No. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't laced with bravado or patriotic flair, just spoken with finality, like a judge giving a sentence, like a father who'd made his peace with what was coming. Then the screen went dark. For 2 minutes, the world held its breath. Then all hell broke loose. The Galactic Council responded within hours. They sent a fleet to Earth's orbit, 28 capital ships, all bristling with weapons designed to vaporize entire continents. Their message was clear: comply, or be turned into ash. Earth refused to answer. But General Thorne wasn't done. He activated the planetary defense grid, tech the Council never knew we had. Turns out, while the politicians played diplomatic games, Thorne and a few other ghosts had been preparing for this moment for decades. The first shot was fired above the South Pacific. One of their cruisers tried to breach atmosphere, and Earth's rail satellites tore it apart in under 9 seconds. The wreckage rained into the ocean like a fallen god. Then came the retaliation. Orbital bombardments lit up the sky. Tokyo went dark first, then Rio, then parts of Nairobi. Millions dead in the first wave. But Thorne didn't blink. He broadcast again, this time from deep underground. Same voice, same scar. Just one more sentence. You can burn our cities, but we'll never kneel. I watched that transmission from a military outpost in northern Canada. I wasn't a soldier, just a systems tech. I rerouted comms, patched into broken feeds, kept satellites online when they tried to jam us. But after that speech, something changed in me, in all of us. Men who had never fired a weapon were picking up arms, fathers building bunkers, teenagers joining Black Ops resistance cells overnight. Because for the first time, Earth had finally said what every man had been dying to scream. No. And that one word was enough to start a war the universe would never forget. I didn't sleep for 3 days after Thorne's second broadcast. No one did. We had no official orders at our post in the Yukon Outlands, no briefing, no reinforcements, just automated messages from World Defense Command repeating, "Stand by for further instruction," like the world wasn't tearing itself apart from orbit. The skies above Canada burned amber and red. fragments from destroyed council drones streaking the atmosphere like falling stars. The forest around the base was silent, even the wildlife gone to ground. I couldn't even hear the wind anymore. Just static, from radios, from screens, from the air itself. People kept asking me for updates like I had some magic line to someone in charge. But I was just a system tech. My job used to be checking signal relays and recalibrating thermal satellites. Now I was watching death spread across the globe in ultra-high definition, powerless to do anything but keep the feed running. By the end of the third day, the casualty counters blinked past 30 million. And no one from command had said a word. Then the storm came. Not from space, but from inside. Base Commandant Rennick, an old Earth loyalist, called an emergency meeting in the APS chamber. Said he had intel that a secondary tribute order had been transmitted from the Council to what he called cooperative Earth factions. Traitor states, countries who didn't want war, leaders who'd secretly agreed to hand over their citizens if it meant being spared from orbital fire. He didn't name names, but he didn't have to. Everyone in the room looked at each other the same way you'd look at a man hiding a knife behind his back. Some of us, Rennick said, may be under orders to cooperate, and that's their decision, but we will not interfere. He wasn't telling us to stand down. He was telling us to look the other way. That was the moment something snapped in me. And I wasn't alone. His words hadn't even stopped echoing in the room before Captain Myers, the only real soldier among us, stood up, slow and deliberate. "You're asking us to let them take people?" Myers asked, his voice low. "I'm saying we don't start a civil war on top of an alien invasion," Rennick replied. But it was too late. The silence in that room wasn't silence anymore. It was judgment, cold, sharp. Every man in that room felt it, the line being drawn, and which side they were on. By nightfall, Myers had disappeared with 6 others. Deserters, they called them. Heroes, I thought. That was the last time I saw the base as a unit. After that, it was cells within cells, whispers, guns going missing, vehicles requisitioned. No one trusted anyone. I started sleeping in the comms room. Just me, 3 screens, and the ghosts of cities I'd never visit again. On the 5th day, I got a private transmission, scrambled and tagged with an old Earth defense code I hadn't seen since the Europa resistance days. From Black Site 17, priority red flag subject Thorn. I opened it expecting coordinates, maybe a message. What I got was a live feed. Thorn, again, same bunker, same scar. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood 5 men and 2 women, all dressed in outdated military exosuits, their insignias stripped, their expressions unreadable. Silent soldiers, like statues carved from anger and purpose. "Earth has fractured," Thorn began, his voice dry and graveled. "There are those who would kneel to survive. We do not fault them for their fear. But we will not follow." He paused, then leaned slightly toward the camera. "They're coming for you next, not with fleets, with lies, with smiles. With papers and promises. They will send our own to collect the tribute. You will know them by how easy their words sound." The room behind me felt colder as he spoke. I stared at the screen like it was speaking directly to me, not as a soldier, not as a tech, but as a man being asked to choose. "There is no neutral ground anymore," Thorn continued, "not for any of us." Then the feed cut. No signature, no trace, but it didn't need one. He'd given us all the same message: make your stand or step aside. That night, I made mine. I pulled every secure channel offline. Every fallback line of communication the base used to report to Central Command, I rerouted them into dead satellites. I sabotaged my own network piece by piece until I knew for certain this base was cut off. No way to call in Council-aligned reinforcements. No way to betray what was left of our resistance, and no way back. When Rennick found out, he came for me himself. He didn't bring guards, just a sidearm and a bottle of aged whiskey. He found me alone in the comms room, wires scattered like veins across the floor. "You really think this is gonna change anything?" he asked, holding the gun like it weighed 100 pounds. "I think it'll buy time," I said, "and maybe cost them something." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he set the bottle down beside me and walked away. I never saw him again. By the 7th day, Earth's skies were quieter, not because the war had stopped, but because it had shifted. No more mass bombardments, no more cruiser fleets, just surgical strikes, assassinations, quiet visits to world leaders. That's when the real war began. The Council realized something, that we were too stubborn to crush from orbit. So they tried something worse. They tried to make us crush each other. Every free zone became a hunting ground for collaborators. Every rebel cell had a mole. Every supply drop was a gamble. People started turning on each other, afraid their neighbor was feeding intel to the Council. I watched a father shoot his own son on a live stream from Chicago. Thought he was a spy. He wasn't. The man killed himself 3 minutes later. The Council never had to fire a shot in that neighborhood again. But there were still pockets of hope. Thorne's people, the Ghost Division, they were called now, had started hitting the Council where it hurt. Not just ships and stations, but reputation. They hacked broadcasts, exposed every Earth traitor by name, by face, by action. They leaked footage of Council atrocities, the tribute camps, the forced sterilizations, the brain mods they used to reprogram the abducted into silent workers. They didn't just want our bodies, they wanted our minds broken, and Thorne made sure we saw every horror of what cooperation meant. By the time the second week rolled in, the Council's plan had backfired. Instead of dividing us, they'd unified the desperate. Instead of compliance, they got rage, and rage was louder than fear. From the ashes of every bombed-out city came the one thing the Council feared more than weapons: belief. Not in politicians, not in peace, but in each other. Men like Myers, deserters, became local heroes. Women ran underground medic units in subways and sewers. Kids learned to jam tracking drones before they could spell the word resistance. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were evolving. And yet, I couldn't shake the weight in my chest, because I knew what was coming. This wasn't just a war. This was a message to the rest of the galaxy. The Council needed Earth to lose, publicly, or the other planets would start asking their own questions. And if that happened, the tribute system would collapse. So they changed tactics again. They didn't try to destroy Earth anymore. They tried to erase it. They began seeding the narrative that Earth had voluntarily self-destructed rather than submit. They faked footage of Earth generals initiating orbital bombardments themselves. Claimed we had a viral insurrection and had turned on our own people. In the Galactic Newsnet, we were the villains. The savages, the ungrateful species that refused to participate in peace. They wanted the other planets to see us as mad dogs, so when the final strike came, no one would blink. But there was one thing they didn't count on, that we were watching them too. Every lie they told, we intercepted. Every fake news drop we hijacked and exposed. And at the center of it all, still standing, still fighting, was General Thorne. I didn't know how long he could last. Didn't know how long any of us could. But when the last beacon went up from Base Vega, the signal that meant a full planetary invasion was imminent, I saw that one word again, flashed across the sky in every language, in every corner of the Earth. No. And for the first time in my life, I believed in something bigger than survival. I believed in the power of that one word. And I knew we would make them regret ever asking for tribute. 2 weeks into the invasion, the war stopped feeling like a cause. It became survival, nothing more. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore, not in any grand, poetic sense. We were fighting for each breath, each unburned street, each child who hadn't yet been taken. The ideals Thorne spoke of in those transmissions, resistance, honor, defiance, they were real. But on the ground, none of that made it easier to watch a drone ship level a refugee shelter because it matched the heat profile of a hostile cluster. The line between soldiers and civilians disappeared. The moment you helped, passed along a data chip, hid someone, jammed a signal, you became a target. That was the Council's strategy now. Total submission through chaos. No safe zones, no non-combatants. Every man, woman, and child either fell in line or became a statistic. I was stationed in what remained of Anchorage, but stationed is a generous word. The old command center was gone, bombed into memory. We were running comms from the basement of a gutted metro station, surrounded by busted vending machines and empty fuel cells. No heat, no proper food. Just crates of dried protein and instant stimulant packs we mixed into melted snow. I barely recognized myself in the reflective glass of the broken consoles. Hollow eyes, dirty skin, beard starting to grow wild. My uniform was 2 sizes too loose. I'd lost weight, even though we ate once a day if we were lucky. But it wasn't hunger that wore me down. It was the silence. Not the kind from bombs falling or engines screaming overhead. I could handle that. No, this was the silence after. The blank stares, the quiet sobbing of people too tired to scream, the way men clenched their jaws when they saw another family crushed beneath rubble. No one cried out loud anymore. It was like our throats had forgotten how. Then came the list. It was uploaded onto every remaining Earthside server the Council hadn't wiped. A file simply labeled Priority Reclamation, Tier 1. It wasn't encrypted. That was the point. They wanted us to see it. Names, human names, thousands of them, each tagged with a region, location coordinates, status, Lev, capture authorized. They weren't just taking us. They were hunting us. The names weren't random either. They were leaders, signal operators, rebel technicians, anyone who'd disrupted Council infrastructure or broadcast Thorne's messages, anyone who refused to disappear. My name was on page 11. Row 34. I stared at it for hours. Thought maybe it was a mistake. I wasn't anyone important, not a fighter, not a leader, just a system tech who plugged wires and rewrote firewalls. But they had found me. And that meant I'd done something right, or something unforgivable. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat with my back to the bunker wall, a rifle across my knees, watching the door, waiting for the end. But it didn't come. Instead, just before dawn, someone slipped a folded note under the door. No name, no signature, just 7 words. They're coming. 1 hour. Head west. Trust Myers. Myers. I hadn't heard that name since the Yukon base, since he walked out with those 6 soldiers and disappeared into the snow. Everyone said he died in the Black Forest Massacre, a failed ambush on a Council convoy. Apparently, everyone was wrong. I didn't question the note, didn't have time. I grabbed my gear, wiped the drives, destroyed the uplinks, and burned every paper record before I slipped out through the sewage tunnel we used as an emergency exit. 10 minutes later, I was trudging through knee-deep snow under a sky painted with aurora and ash. I didn't know if I'd make it far. I didn't even know if I believed the note. But something in me moved anyway. Some stubborn part that still believed in impossible escapes and old friends who remembered your name. I made it to the edge of a frozen ridge just as the dropships arrived. 5 of them. Black, sleek, marked with the Council's serpent emblem. They circled low over the metro station before launching twin pulses of blue energy. The bunker collapsed inward like a crushed soda can. A flash, then dust. Nothing more. I was supposed to be inside. They thought I was. They didn't know Myers was alive, and that meant something dangerous. It meant there were others. I followed the route west, ducking between half-collapsed buildings and frozen trees, until I hit a clearing just before dusk. And there he was. Myers, older, leaner. His left eye was synthetic now, glowing faint amber in the snow glare. He wore no insignia, no rank, just a cracked chest plate and a pulse rifle slung across his back like an old friend. "You're late," he said. I didn't speak, just stared. He nodded, as if understanding everything I couldn't say. "You're not dead," I finally whispered. He smiled. But there was no warmth in it. "Not yet." His group wasn't large, 7 others, 1 medic, 2 engineers, the rest ex-soldiers like him, tired, angry, all of them with scars. Their camp was hidden in a collapsed train tunnel, lined with makeshift heaters and salvaged tech from dead drones. They called themselves the Forgotten. Former military, disavowed, off-grid. People the Council assumed had already been taken or killed. They had intel, maps, Council transmission patterns, even schematics of slave transports and orbital assault cycles. They weren't just surviving. They were planning. "Why me?" I asked Myers that night as we huddled around the heater. He didn't look up from the pulse cartridge he was repairing. "Because you gave us a chance. You shut down Rennick's link to command. That bought Thorne 6 more hours during the Vega fallback. He said you saved 3 cities with that." I blinked. I just pulled some wires. "Thorne knows?" Myers looked at me, and something flickered in his synthetic eye. "Thorne never forgets the ones who bleed for Earth." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. That night, I lay on a blanket of thermal mesh beside a rusted train car, staring at a sky full of stars and wreckage. I saw flashes of light in orbit, faint, distant, but there. Another fight, maybe, another fleet falling, and I realized something. The war wasn't ending soon, and I wasn't going home, because there was no home anymore. Only this, us, the Forgotten, and the promise Thorne made to every man who whispered no into the face of a god. The next week blurred by like smoke through broken glass. No sunrise, no peace, just cold winds, stale rations, and the weight of waiting. Waiting for the next bombardment, the next dropship, the next betrayal. That was the thing no one told you about resistance. It's not built on glory. It's built on doubt. Heavy, quiet doubt that follows you through every breath and questions if any of it matters. Myers moved like a ghost through the ruins. He never barked orders, never made speeches, just handed out assignments like they were tools for survival, not tasks of war. "Rewire this comm relay. Scan for transport signals. Dig in deeper here. They're sweeping with drones now." I did what I could. It wasn't much. I wasn't a soldier, never had been. But I knew systems, knew how to splice Council signal bands and rig decoys that made our camp look like empty farmland. Myers said it bought us time. I didn't argue. I just kept working. There were 9 of us now. 2 had died on a supply run 4 days earlier, walked into a trap, Council sympathizers pretending to be refugees. Their screams came through on the open channel, cut short by plasma fire. I still hear it when I try to sleep. If anyone cried, they did it in private. Out here, emotion was a liability. Then came the signal. It arrived on a scrambled pulse band we hadn't used since the early days of the war, back when Earth still had the cities instead of graves. Encrypted message from Thorne. We all gathered around the makeshift receiver as Myers decrypted the stream. The flickering screen illuminated our faces in the dark tunnel, every eye locked on it like it was gospel. Then the message appeared. Strike target. Orbital hub Zeta. 30 hours. Full disruption. You know what to do. No mercy. No signature. None needed. Everyone knew what Orbital hub Zeta was. It was the Council's primary tribute processing center, a massive skyport hovering just above Earth's atmosphere, protected by a fleet of gunships and automated sentries. It was where they sent the captured, where they broke them, where they turned humans into cargo. It floated like a scar above the Pacific, hidden behind cloaking fields, never touching ground, untouchable until now. Disruption? Someone asked. Myers didn't look up. He wants it gone. Gone like damaged? I asked. He finally turned to me. No, gone like it never existed. No one spoke for a while after that. We didn't have the weapons. We didn't have the numbers. And yet no one said no. Because Thorne had spoken. And out here, Thorne was the only thing holding our pieces together. Later that night, Myers pulled me aside. You're going with them, he said, handing me a data chip sealed in a tiny casing. What is this? Payload directive. It needs to be uploaded manually from inside the hub's command center. Auto systems won't crack it. I turned it over in my hand. What's it do? His jaw tightened. It tells our little stolen ship how to fall apart in just the right way. Controlled burn. Energy spike. Turns the vessel into a gravity bomb. My throat went dry. So, we're crashing a ship into the hub? He didn't blink. You'll have 6 minutes to get out after upload. And if I can't? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The next morning we set out. 4 of us. 1 salvaged Council courier ship retrofitted with stolen tech and the barest layer of cloaking. It wasn't made for this. None of us were. But sometimes war doesn't care about design. It only cares about damage. My teammates were strangers. The medic, quiet, with a tremor in his hand. A former pilot who hadn't spoken since losing his brother in a raid. And a woman from the Afric block. Eyes sharp as steel, nerves sharper. She didn't say much, but she never flinched. The trip took 5 hours. The orbital climb was smooth, mostly due to the stolen clearance codes we'd gotten from a dead Council officer 3 weeks prior. Myers had said it wouldn't last more than 10 minutes past final docking. He was right. The moment we breached the docking perimeter, alarms triggered. The hub's AI flagged us as unregistered, and the terminal began flashing override codes we couldn't decrypt fast enough. We had 1 shot. The pilot hit the manual override and disengaged the cloak, setting the ship into a steady orbit around the platform's west flank. The rest of us suited up and prepped for the breach. We didn't wait for authorization. We never had it. The outer hull of the hub was sleek, metal so polished it looked like liquid. No signs of life, no windows, just steel, sensors, and guns. We landed on the hull with mag boots and used a micro cutter to slice into the maintenance access point. The first guard inside didn't even have time to scream. Neither did the second. We moved fast, quiet, deliberate. The corridors were narrow, designed more for processing than defense. We avoided the prisoner wings. That wasn't our mission. We were ghosts, and I was the bullet. By the time we reached the command deck, the ship was already locked into a destabilizing orbit. We had maybe 8 minutes before it began falling, and we had to tell it where to fall. I found the main console and slotted the chip into the core. The lights flickered. A deep hum filled the room. "Upload started?" I said. I looked back. The medic was covering the entrance. The pilot was bypassing the bulkhead lock to give us a second escape route. The woman, I still didn't know her name, was watching me like a hawk. 5 minutes, she whispered. The upload hit 60%. That's when the blast hit. The deck shook as plasma charges ripped through the corridor outside. The medic went down first, throat gone, eyes wide, The pilot screamed but managed to fire a return shot before he was torn in half. The woman fired 2 shots, clean and fast. Both guards dropped. Then she turned to me. 70%. My hands were shaking now. I didn't want to die here. Not like this. But that's the thing about war. It never gives you a good ending. Just endings. The door burst open again. More guards flooding in. We were outnumbered, outgunned. She handed me the escape beacon. "Go," she said. "I'll hold them." I froze. "You'll die." She smiled, just a small, broken thing. "We all do, but not everyone gets to matter." Then she charged, and I ran. I didn't look back. Couldn't. I sprinted down the backup corridor, through the emergency vent, across the maintenance deck, and launched into the emergency escape pod seconds before the ship's orbit collapsed. From the pod, I watched it all unfold. The courier ship ignited mid-descent, its self-destruct converting the energy core into a gravitational rupture. The blast folded space inward like a fist. Orbital hub Zeta shattered. In silence. No glory. Just fire and metal and nothing. I didn't feel relief. I felt sick. 2 of them dead. 1 buying my life with hers. All for a command from a man none of us had seen in person for months. But as my pod fell back toward Earth, streaking through the clouds, I remembered her words. Not everyone gets to matter, and that was the thing that stuck with me. Because war doesn't care who dies. Only who mattered enough to be remembered. The escape pod crash-landed somewhere outside of what used to be Portland. The AI failed during re-entry, so the descent was uncontrolled. A blind fall through storm clouds and shattered skies. I remember screaming. I remember fire. Then I remember nothing. When I came to, it was quiet. No gunfire, no sirens, just wind. I dragged myself out of the wreckage with a dislocated shoulder and 3 cracked ribs. My suit was half melted, the emergency beacon shattered, and my helmet visor had spiderwebbed from the impact. But I was alive. Somehow, I was alive. She wasn't. The pilot. The medic. The woman who covered my escape. None of them had names in the mission logs, just code names and clearance IDs. Disposable ghosts sent to die for one more strike in a war that didn't even make the headlines anymore. The Council censored every victory we had, spun each loss as progress. But they couldn't hide this one. Orbital Hub Zeta was their crown jewel, a floating monument to compliance. Its destruction triggered a response across dozens of border worlds. I didn't know it at the time, but I would later hear how resistance groups on Vega Prime, Cero 9, and even parts of the Trion Syndicate rose up after seeing the footage we leaked. The explosion became a symbol, but symbols don't bury the dead. I walked for 3 days with nothing but ration packs and a busted sidearm. The land was dry. Scorched by atmospheric burns and chemical storms. Trees had turned to black statues. Cities were hollow skeletons. I passed mass graves marked only by tattered flags and scorch rings where council dropships had landed. The 4th day, I collapsed. Somewhere in the dust, I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, I was under a real roof, a metal one, reinforced, lined with solar cloth and heat filters. A face hovered over mine, blurry at first. Middle-aged man, broad shoulders, one eyeglass, the other tired. "You're lucky we found you," he said. His name was Kellen, leader of a small outpost that had survived thanks to a water purifier trade deal with the Resistance months ago. They weren't fighters, just families, farmers, mechanics, people who wanted to live, not win. He let me stay, fed me, patched me up. Never asked for a damn thing. But eventually, he asked the question. "You were on that hub, weren't you?" I didn't answer at first. I just nodded. He looked down at the table between us. There was a quiet there, the kind you can't escape. Then he said something that caught me off guard. My brother was taken there. 3 months ago. We begged the council to let us buy him back. They laughed. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, I whispered. He nodded. Me too. Then he walked away. That night I sat outside the shelter and looked up at the sky, or what was left of it. No stars anymore, just ash drifting past broken cloud systems and static-filled satellite trails. The air stank of metal and loss. I should have died on that hub. I should have gone down with the others. And part of me still believed I did, that I left the best part of myself back there, in that corridor, on that console, when she handed me the escape beacon and chose to die so I could live. Her name was never recorded. She'll never have a memorial. She'll never be remembered by anyone but me. And maybe that's the worst part of war. It takes everything beautiful and leaves you with the pieces too broken to bury. I stayed with Kellen's people for 5 days. Long enough to recover. Long enough to start feeling something like guilt. Then, just before dawn, on the 6th day, a convoy arrived. Resistance vehicles. 5 of them, camouflaged and armored, bearing the mark of the Black Signal, a division of Thorne's Ghost Corps. I'd only heard rumors. They didn't operate in clusters. They didn't negotiate. They came for one reason. Targets. I stepped outside before anyone else could react. The convoy doors hissed open, and out stepped a woman in dark armor, silver scars running down her neck like vines. You're coming with us, she said. Why? Debrief. Command wants you. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Thorne. They took me in silence. No cuffs, no questions, but no kindness either. The outpost said goodbye without words, just a few nods. I think they were afraid. Of me, of what I'd done, of who was now coming to collect me. The ghost convoy drove for 14 hours through dead lands and ash valleys. We passed ruins of former council silos, burned out rebel hideouts. One spot still smoking, a reminder of a failed uprising. We arrived at a bunker carved into the bones of a mountain. Inside, it was all function. No flags, no symbols, no speeches. And there he was. General Thorne. Older now, not in age, but in weight. His eyes were dimmer, his frame leaner, but the scar still crossed his cheek like a warning. He stood in front of me like we'd spoken yesterday. You survived, he said. I didn't answer. He walked around me slowly, like inspecting a puzzle he hadn't solved yet. They said you uploaded the payload under fire. That true? Yes. They said you were the only one who made it out. I nodded. He looked at me for a long time. Then, do you regret it? I didn't know what he meant. Surviving? Killing? Fighting? Yes, I said anyway. He nodded. Then handed me a data slate. On it were new coordinates, mission files, tactical logs, and something else. A dossier. Not just mine. Hers. The woman from the hub. Her name was Ren Solace. She had once been a council engineer before defecting. She'd designed the very hub we destroyed. She knew it better than anyone. And she volunteered to go back. Why show me this? I asked. Because you should know who gave you your life, he said. She never told me her name. She didn't need to. She chose the war, not the recognition. I clenched my fists. This war's not going to end with a speech, Thorne. You know that? He nodded. It ends with a question. What question? His eyes locked on mine. What will they do when they realize Earth won't die the way they planned? He turned away then, walking into the shadows of the command room. Get ready, he called back. We're going to make them regret waking us up. At first it started with whispers, small things, a radio transmission that claimed the tribute order was misunderstood, that Earth had misinterpreted the Council's intent. A pamphlet dropped by stealth drones in rural resistance zones, reading, "We never asked for blood, only unity." Then came the vids. carefully edited footage showing council officers aiding human survivors, holograms of supposed liberated citizens, thanking the Galactic Council for saving them from Earth's rebellion. They looked like us, talked like us, spoke perfect English, Spanish, Hindi, Creole. Only none of us recognized them. Every face was a stranger, every name fabricated. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was how fast people believed it. At first, resistance outposts laughed, called it cheap theater, desperate propaganda. But then came the fractures. Some border settlements stopped answering transmissions. Others refused aid drops, claiming Earth Command is lying. Entire pockets of fighters dropped off the grid, convinced that the real threat wasn't the Council, but Thorn, that he was prolonging a war that could have ended in peace. The worst part? The Council didn't need to kill us. They just made us question what we were dying for. I saw it firsthand. 2 weeks after returning from the Zeta Hub op, Thorn sent me to a resistance-linked town called Revel Station in the Rocky Corridor, a hardline zone that had once helped us intercept a Council convoy near Denver. They were loyal, solid, or so we thought. My task was simple: update their comm servers and install new anti-interference patches. Just tech work, in and out. But the moment I arrived, I felt it. The silence. Not fear, not tension, indifference. No one saluted. No one asked for updates. No one looked me in the eye for longer than a second. Their outpost was pristine. Clean uniforms, polished weapons, smiling children. It looked wrong. Manufactured. I met their lead, a man named Teller. Tall, soft-spoken, clean-shaven, like he hadn't missed a day of peace since the war began. He welcomed me with the kind of smile politicians use. "Didn't expect someone as high value as you to be sent out here," he said, pouring tea like we weren't surrounded by ruin. "I'm not high value," I replied. "Just useful." He chuckled. "Isn't that the same thing these days?" We talked. Light things, weather, supply chains, comm disruptions. He said all the right words. But none of them sounded like belief. As I moved through the station, installing Thorn's patch, I kept noticing patterns, conversations that ended when I entered a room. Wall panels hiding flickering Council broadcast nodes, kids watching a feed that showed Earth resistance fighters executing Council peace envoys. I thought it was spoofed. I thought it was a joke. Then I found their relay hub, hidden beneath their food depot. Guarded. When I sliced into the firewall, my blood ran cold. They weren't receiving Council propaganda. They were rebroadcasting it. A clean, uninterrupted data stream from one of the Council's inner communication loops, translated, localized, and dressed up to look like independent Earth sources. News articles, human commentators, footage of Council peacekeepers. Fake. All of it fake. But real enough to make people believe. The last thing I saw before they caught me was a video titled, "General Thorn, Terrorist or Tyrant?" I didn't have time to react. 2 soldiers dragged me from the console room and into a side chamber. Teller was waiting. No more smiles, no more tea. He looked at me like I was the madman. "You think Thorn's the only one with a cause?" he asked. "The Council can rebuild, unite, elevate. He just wants revenge." "Thorn wants freedom," I said, voice tight. "And he doesn't fake broadcasts to get it." Teller knelt beside me. "Do you even know what Earth looks like from above? It's dying. We've lost. But he won't stop. He'll drag every last one of us into the dirt because he's too proud to say yes." "And you already said it for him?" He smiled. "You'll see. Everyone does, eventually." Then he hit me, a sharp jab to the side of my neck. Everything went black. I woke up in a white room, not a cell, not a cage, something far worse. It was clean, bright, clinical. No restraints, no bruises, no visible injuries, but everything felt off. The bed was too soft, The air too warm, the silence too perfect. A screen blinked on in front of me, then a voice, calm, even, female, familiar in the way only well-engineered synthetic voices could be. "Welcome, Ethan." They knew my name. That meant one of two things. Either I'd been betrayed, or I'd been watched for far longer than I realized. Probably both. "I'm here to help you," the voice said. I didn't speak. "Your nervous system shows elevated stress," it continued. "Would you like to begin the clarity cycle?" I stayed silent. The screen flickered. Images appeared. A child crying beside a crater. A council officer giving him food. A human soldier shoving that food aside and dragging the boy away. Fake. But it didn't look fake. It looked like memory. The voice returned. "Truth is no longer about what happened. It's about what endures." Then it began showing my own memories. Somehow they'd tapped my neurofeed. Brainwave data from the suit I'd worn during the Zeta operation. They showed her. Ren. The moment she handed me the escape beacon. But they altered the clip. They made it look like I pushed her out of the way. Like I ran while she begged me to help. My heart stuttered. I knew it wasn't true, but it looked true, and that was the game. Doubt. Infection of the soul. The screen changed again. Footage of General Thorne. Surveillance clips I'd never seen. Him ordering civilian evacuations delayed to protect a key relay station. His voice cold. Strategic. "Acceptable losses," he said in one. My gut twisted. I didn't want to believe it. But part of me did. Because I'd seen those losses, and I never asked who made the call. The voice returned, softer now. "Would you like to speak with someone who understands?" I should have said no, but I didn't. I was tired, so damn tired. The door hissed open. And my brother walked in. My brother had been dead for 5 years, or so I thought. He walked in like he'd never left. Same eyes, same jawline, same crooked scar across his left eyebrow from when we used to race bikes through the refinery ruins. Except it wasn't right. He moved too smooth. Too clean. His boots didn't carry the weight of war. His hands had no calluses. His eyes? Too still. "Ethan," he said like we were meeting at a bar. I just stared. "Don't do this," I muttered. He sat across from me. "You don't have to keep hurting." I shook my head. "You're not him." He smiled. "What does it matter?" "You're not who you were either." I stood up, but the walls didn't change. No alarms, no guards, because they didn't need to restrain me. They just needed to convince me. "Do you know how many people have died for Thorne's pride?" The thing wearing my brother's face asked. "Do you know what he's hiding from you?" I clenched my fists. "What is this? A confession booth? An act?" "It's a lifeline," he said. "You're not our prisoner, not really. You're proof." "Proof of what?" "That belief can be broken." He leaned forward. "We know your mind, Ethan. Your fear, your doubts. You wake up at night wondering if Ren's death meant anything, if any of it did. And we're offering you something Thorne never will." "What's that?" He didn't blink. "Peace." I almost laughed, because the most dangerous word in war isn't no. It's peace, when it comes wearing the face of someone you lost. "You're trying to turn me," I said. He shrugged. "We don't need to. You'll do it yourself, once you see what Thorne really is." The screen behind him flickered again. This time, an intercepted message from Thorne. But not the broadcasted kind. This was private. Unfiltered, his voice was tired, weighed down. "We control the leaks, the deaths, the heroes. We need martyrs. We need fear. We need their pain. It keeps them angry. It keeps them ours." My stomach dropped. It sounded real. Too real. The thing across from me watched my face. Why fight for a man who sees your suffering as a tool? I wanted to answer, but I couldn't, because somewhere deep down the seed had been planted. What if this was true? What if Thorn wasn't a savior? What if he was just another tyrant wearing the mask of resistance? What if I'd killed for the wrong reasons? The walls around me didn't move, but inside I was crumbling. I closed my eyes. Ren's face burned behind my eyelids, the way she looked at me. Not like a soldier, not like a follower, but like a believer. And I realized something. She didn't die for Thorn. She died for the choice to say no. I opened my eyes, and I smiled. No, I said. My fake brother tilted his head. No? That's your problem. You think this war was about Thorn, about orders, about strategy? He stood up. I stepped forward. It was about us, I said. And the moment you made Earth choose, you lost. The screen behind him turned red. Alarms finally triggered. But it was too late. I tackled the console with my shoulder and smashed the uplink with a piece of the chair. Sparks flew. The screen died. I backed away as guards burst in, weapons raised. They didn't shoot. They didn't need to. I wasn't their enemy. I was their failure. And in that moment, I knew exactly what Thorn meant when he said this war would end with a question, because I had just answered it. They didn't kill me. That was the first sign. The guards who stormed the room didn't drag me to a cell, didn't beat me, didn't chain me to a wall. They simply bound my hands, covered my eyes, and walked me out of the white room with steps too soft to be military. I heard no alarms, no cries, no chaos, just silence and the hum of the council's precision. I expected torture. What I got was exile. They left me in the middle of a no-man's wasteland, deep in the Badlands near the remains of Salt Lake. The shuttle dropped me in the dust without ceremony. No words, no weapons, just my boots, a tattered jacket, and a datapad with one message. They won't take you back. You are neither theirs nor ours. A punishment worse than death. No side, no purpose, just silence. But they didn't understand. They thought breaking a man meant isolating him, stripping him of allegiance, making him question his place. What they forgot, what they always underestimated, was that humans don't find meaning in orders. We find it in the people we lose. Ren, Myers, the medic whose name I never knew, the children buried beneath glassed-out craters, the farmers who stood between drone fire and their homes. The council gave me time to think, so I thought about them. And then I walked. I moved at night. The salt flats were deadly in the sun. Temperatures cooked flesh in under an hour. But the nights? They were survivable if you knew how to hide, how to bury yourself under sand and still breathe. It took me 4 days to reach an old rebel checkpoint along the Colorado Divide. It had been burned out months ago, but some of the relay panels still blinked. I wired together a distress beacon using a copper shard, a salvaged solar cell, and what was left of the council datapad. I didn't expect anyone to answer. They did. I woke up in the back of a ground transport, covered in a thermal sheet, half-conscious. A voice murmured in the front cabin, gruff, sharp, human. The vehicle hit bumps like it was dodging wreckage. Then I saw her. Not Ren, but a woman built like her, eyes that didn't flinch, skin scarred from plasma burns. She held a rifle across her lap like a lover. "You're the ghost from Revel," she said. I nodded, throat raw. She passed me a water bottle. "Thorn's been looking for you." We reached the new command cell at nightfall. This wasn't a bunker. It was a fortress carved into the bones of a buried supercarrier. An old Earth-Navy behemoth sunk during the first days of orbital collapse. The corridor still smelled like oil and fire. Thorn was waiting. He stood in front of a rusted tactical table, one hand clenched behind his back, the other hovering over a map of shifting red zones. He didn't look up when I entered. didn't greet me. "You gave them too much," he said. I flinched. "I didn't crack." He finally turned. "You don't have to speak, Ethan. They scan, they inject. You just have to dream the wrong thing." I met his eyes. "Then why am I still breathing?" A long silence. "Because I still believe you're useful." The words hit harder than a bullet. Thorne stepped closer. "They didn't kill you because they wanted you to bring something back. Something small, invisible, a thought, a doubt." He stared hard. "Do you doubt me, Ethan?" I opened my mouth, closed it. That was enough. He turned away. "You're off field duty. You're compromised. You want to stay in this war, you'll do it behind screens and wires." The shame hit deep. I was a fighter, a survivor, but in his eyes, I was a liability. They assigned me to Central Interlink, deep under the carrier, buried in noise and cables, where old Earth satellites were remotely synced and reprogrammed to hijack council frequencies. I worked beside men who never saw the surface. Pale, tired people who'd lost their sunlight and replaced it with signals. We monitored transmissions, we decoded patterns, we watched propaganda morph like a virus, and one day we caught something. A whisper across 12 systems, a phrase hidden inside council uplinks, tucked behind trade logs and transport codes. Operation Seedfall. I ran the analysis, cross-checked metadata, routed backbones. It wasn't just a comms label, it was a deployment tag. Dozens of sleeper agents, human, already embedded inside the resistance. I brought it to Thorne that night. He didn't speak as I showed him the logs. His jaw clenched tighter with every slide. "Names?" I shook my head. "Encrypted. Deep. Level 7 cipher at least." "Can you crack it?" "I can try." He nodded. "Do it. Quietly. If word of this spreads, we'll have a purge on our hands." I hesitated. "What if someone already knows?" His eyes burned. "Then the next betrayal will come from inside this room." And suddenly I realized. The war wasn't turning. It was twisting. No more trenches, no more front lines. Just knives in the dark. And mine would have to be sharper than ever. They say betrayal feels like a blade in the back. They're wrong. It's slower. Sharper. It starts with a look that lingers too long. A pause before someone answers your question. A whisper you weren't meant to hear. It grows like rust inside the steel of trust, until the whole thing snaps when you need it most. And now I knew it had already started. Operation Seedfall wasn't just a mission. It was a disease, planted not with bullets, but with words, with doubt. And Thorne had ordered me to dig into it alone. So I did. I started at the outer comm logs. Isolated background noise across 47 hours of low-level command channels. Buried in the static were timestamps that didn't match reality. Entries tagged with Earth's old 24-hour clock format, not the military standard resistance, UTC. An easy thing to miss. But not for me. And not for someone trying to hide inside a system built to watch. It took 5 days. 5 days of no sleep, coding loops, and decrypting council-laced subroutines. On the 6th night, I found it. A name. Call sign, Veil 12 embedded. Since, Cycle 4, Month 6, Post Zeta. Location, Fort Exodus, North Region Command, Fort Exodus. The second most critical stronghold on Earth, home to one of our key strategists, a man who'd led 2 successful orbital counterstrikes and survived 6 assassination attempts. Commander Ren Maddox. I'd worked with him once, briefly, sharp mind. Good instincts, no ego, but if the Council had turned him, or someone close to him, then everything we'd built was at risk. I took the data straight to Thorne. He didn't say a word as I explained. He just stared at the name, unmoving. Then he said 2 words. Prove it. The transport to Fort Exodus was silent the whole way. Even the pilot avoided eye contact. I wasn't given clearance. I wasn't given rank authority. Thorne had sent me alone. No team, no backup. Because if Maddox was clean, this was a waste. And if he wasn't, I wouldn't be coming back. Fort Exodus sat in the jagged remnants of northern Montana, carved into the hollow of an old mountain range long since caved in from orbital debris. A shield dome covered it, not to stop strikes, but to keep information in. No one entered or exited without Maddox's knowledge. When I arrived, they scanned me 3 times, then took my weapon. Not uncommon. But the guard's grip was too firm when he patted me down. He wasn't just doing his job. He was waiting for something. Inside, the base looked pristine. Too pristine. Like a showroom version of a war zone. Everything polished, everything working. Even the smell of decay, common in most resistant strongholds, was gone. It felt sterile, sanitized, fake. I was escorted to a chamber lined with smart glass panels and reinforced bulkheads. Maddox stood waiting, arms behind his back, expression blank. Ethan. Commander. He gestured to a chair. I didn't sit. Thorne send you to check my loyalty? He asked, like he already knew. I stared at him. Did he need to? He chuckled, dry and low. Thorne sees ghosts everywhere now. I don't blame him. But you? I thought you were smarter than paranoia. I slid the datapad across the table. Let it speak for me. Maddox didn't flinch. He read the file slowly, deliberately. Then he looked up. I know who Veil 12 is. My stomach tensed. You what? I've known for 3 weeks. Why didn't you report it? Because exposing him would have done more damage than letting him stay in place. I stared. You let a council agent live. I watched him, monitored every move. Every file he accessed, I saw it first. Every message he tried to send, I rerouted it into dead space. As far as the council knows, Veil 12 is active and feeding intel. You're using him. He nodded. You think you're the only one who knows how to weaponize a lie? I stepped back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This isn't a game. No, he said coldly. It's a war, and in war, sometimes you let the enemy breathe so you can track his next step. I wanted to argue, but he wasn't wrong. It was smart, strategic, but it felt wrong. Who is it? I asked. Maddox hesitated. That was all I needed. It's someone close to you. I've handled it. No, you've contained it, I snapped. But what happens when the council activates him? What happens when they make him do something you can't stop in time? He didn't answer. That was the second sign. He was gambling. And the stakes were all of us. You should tell Thorne. And lose the advantage? He'd purge the base, burn everything down to get to one man. He's paranoid, you know it. I'm keeping this controlled. I stepped back. Because I realized the truth. Maddox wasn't a traitor. But he'd become something worse. A strategist without a conscience. And I had to choose. Expose Veil 12 and destroy the balance Maddox had built, or keep the secret, and hope the council never calls in their chip. I returned to Thorne the next day. He stood where I'd left him, in front of the map of shifting front lines, a man made of gravel and iron and consequence. Well? He asked. I held up the datapad. False lead, I lied. No embedded agent? Decoy, encrypted junk to trigger our response? He stared at me, for too long. Then he nodded. Burn the report. No trace. Yes, sir. As I walked out, I felt it. That slow, sharp edge of betrayal. Not from the enemy, from myself. I was part of the lie now, a silent partner in the Resistance's quiet rot. Because maybe Maddox was right. Maybe we needed that enemy breathing, just a little longer, so we could catch the next one. But deep down, I knew this couldn't last. Sooner or later, the Council would activate Veil 12, and when they did, it wouldn't just be trust that broke. It would be everything.